So I don't know if some of you may already known, but movies have been getting bad lately. They've been good. They've been getting good also. They've gotten good with Across the Spider Verse, which is now on Netflix right now, non promo. But there's also movies that have been getting bad to where there's controversies of the upcoming Snow White movie. There's controversies about how the Batgirl movie was just completely dropped, despite not. It was just about finished, and they dropped a production that was been worked on for quite a long time. So Moon, what do you have to say about why movies are flopping?
This year has been one of the worst for Hollywood that we've seen in a long time. Aside from a few obvious standouts, nearly every big budget film has fallen flat.
Yeah, definitely. Like in these cases in general, like there's I can understand why Indiana Jones flopped because it was trying to recapture a momentum of novelty where Indiana Jones was trying to spark the flames that happened during the original trilogy, and then when the Crystal Skull came out with Shia LaBeouf, it didn't feel like an Indiana Jones movie. Like the problem is like there was a lot of movies like The Haunted Mansion and Indiana Jones where they're trying to nostalgia bait people, and the writing didn't really help its own case. So I can understand where that comes from versus the Flash movie, where the Flash movie had a lot of controversy with its characters. Like Edgar Miller had a lot of controversy with him to begin with because he was under like uh, uh court problems with like assaults, and the writing and the CGI got really bad, and a lot of it included Michael Keaton, which he wasn't the problem, but using him and its legacy, where he was a Batman from the 90s, 80s, that using that as like a nostalgia bait for people to come watch the movie. Kraken looks like a what if story. It looks like a knock. It looks like DreamWorks version of the Little Mermaid, because the redhead looks like Ariel, and they're doing the flip flop side, which is really weird, like for a lot of people. So again, there's an explanation for Indiana Jones. I don't know about Teenage Kraken. I know about the Flash and the Haunted Mansion.
On its face. Whether it was yet another tired Marvel film desperately trying to justify its existence, or one of the many reboots like Indiana Jones that failed to restart their franchise.
Yeah, because like recent movies have been attempts to restart a franchise, and the majority of the current demographic of people nowadays, they I don't see them having connections to Indiana Jones, for example, because Indiana Jones is a nostalgic point for anyone over the age of 30, over the age of 40, because I grew up with Indiana Jones, or anyone who in 50s plus. It's for older folks, but what movies have to target are the growing consumer. They have to make a perfect movie that not only invites the adults, but it entices the interest of 13-year-olds, of 15-year-olds, of 20-year-olds. And some movies like Indiana Jones, without a proper foundation, will flop. Just like how The Flash was, because the Snyder universe was really bad to begin with because of Injustice. The Justice League movie flopped, and it made a like they backtracked by going back to single hero movies, and Jason Momoa, Aquaman did really well. Shazam became mid. Shazam's first movie was really good, and then it got mediocre. And then there was a really bad direction when it came to like converting James Gunn to from Snyder to James Gunn, and that conversion caused that problem. But
It
what
begs
can I
the
say?
question, why do so many modern movies suck? With their massive budgets, their 1,000-strong production crews, you'd expect the opposite. But over the past 2 decades, the quality of blockbuster movies has fallen off a cliff. So what went wrong? Well, this is a question that the big studios are asking themselves right now, as they're chucking endless amounts of cash at this problem. Modern movies
Yeah, because they think if they spend more money, then they can reach a better audience. When the problem is they're not researching their target audience to begin with. I don't feel like they are researching enough as to what kids are getting into, because nowadays there's so much more things to distract yourself with that you have to figure out how can a movie beat, how does the price of a ticket beat the enjoyment of a video game, beat the enjoyment of social media, beat the enjoyment of uh, what's currently available. Because to everybody else, movies back then, you didn't have the latest technologies to play mobile games, console games, PC games, TikTok, Instagram, Vine. Your movies are competing against other forms of media, and they're not understanding the problem that they are throwing money at a problem that they aren't researching on.
Movie budgets are the highest they've ever been. More and more money has been thrown at directors, letting them hire bigger actors, more writers, and leading to a revolution in visual effects. It seems like a simple fact that having more resources to realize your creative vision would make it better. But that's not the real reason studios have been doing this. Instead, as always, it's because of profits. Way back in 2009, as this trend for massive budgets was beginning to emerge, a research firm called SNL Kagan released a very interesting study looking at film budgets and how they relate to profits. By analyzing films released
some things change, and some.
I don't want to know about your plans, jeez, but like these ads are getting crazy. But again, like they're not understanding the budget. They think that by providing more money to the budget, it'll solve the problem. But the issue is, again, they're not researching their target.
2004 and 2008 film budgets and how they relate to profits. By analyzing films released between 2004 and 2008, they found that breaching the $90 million mark for a film made it far more likely to do well at the box office.
And like that makes sense, because like I would understand that if you put tons of money into development for the effects, if you're trying to make movies more anime like, then I can understand where the money's coming from. If you're spending millions of dollars to create CGI, to create animations and mocap and the acting to be as Sakuga as possible. Like, case in point, I watched within the first few minutes of the new season of Demon Slayer, it was so cinematic. There was a character that was going through the infinite domain, the infinite castle, and that animation was so good. It made me very interested in what the season had in store, because it's just a guy simply falling through an infinite space, but because of a character, he is interacting with such infinity. So that made that scene very good. But nowadays, most live action movies can't do that. Most live action movies have to spend the money to make in real life characters, in real life actors, to do anime bullshit, to do animation bullshit. Like in Spider-Man, it's very hard to choreograph an Across the Spider-Verse scene in live action. So the amount of money spent to emulate that is going to exponentiate.
Mid-budget films, on the other hand, despite only costing half as much to make, were far riskier. And there were a few reasons for this. With massive blockbusters, audiences knew they were going to see a big spectacle that was well worth the ticket fee. They also had enough of a marketing budget to make sure everybody knew about it. Most of the studios probably went based on
studio finds bigger budgets don't always mean greater profits, because you've seen in the recent reboots, in the live action versions of some movies, it doesn't work.
The decisions on the study alone, they were working with the same data, and so soon enough, the big 5 movie studios were focused almost solely on big budget films, whilst the flow of medium-sized films has dried up. And this led to a few massive problems. You would think that
because like a certain magic that came with mid-budget films is it challenges film producers, it challenges the actors to say, okay, I have a minimum budget, shoot. It's a similar discussion when it comes to smaller YouTube channels and big YouTube channels. It's how you use your current tools, and when you're broke, you have to be very inventive on how you create your content. That's how the rise of reaction content became, because it was easy to produce, and it is a way for the niche that it is, it promotes other people, it promotes other creators, but it also shows like, hey, I don't have any money, but how can I make a film that's as impactful as bigger budgets? And Moon made this really well developed production. But the fact is that as a small creator like myself, I feel like my opinion matters. My opinion has weight. So that's where reaction content comes into play, because it's the equivalence of a mid budget to a high budget film. Much like how you can record a video with an iPhone these days, with an Android phone these days, and the phone quality is just enough to where you can make a video, and it may not be good content, but it's what you say that makes the content quality. It's understanding that, sure, this would be a better video if I had a better camera. The quality will be better, the quality of the video itself, but the content has to matter. Like, I can do a 4K recording of the moon or somebody eating, but without proper context, the higher quality doesn't support the content. To where, if you wanted to see someone eating food, you could have had your phone recorded, but again, like, it's a matter of like what tools you use, and they think that by throwing money at the problem, by throwing money at better equipment, that makes a better movie. That's not the case. It's how you make it. It's what you put into it. I'm sorry.
More money would always help a film, but in the end, too many cooks spoil the broth. Only the most controlling and demanding directors could resist the opinions of so many different people trying to apply their own ideas to the movie. It was made way worse by the studios micromanaging every single aspect of their films to suit their focus groups, and so the creativity fell apart. And a final reason for the shift to spectacle was just that these kinds of films play way better to now massive Chinese audiences. The lost
I can see that, because a lot of the because if it can happen, but because if a production can do well in Japan, in China, then it can happen anywhere, because China has that much of an influence on media as well.
Also, the mid-budget films was just as bad, if it's just one big CGI fight anyway. But this isn't true for lower budget films with more than a few pages of dialogue that aren't just witty quips.
Yeah, because oftentimes quips, for as many times you shuffle the amount of quips into a movie, it won't change the. That was another ad within 2 minutes of the film. Jeez, but it's fine. Mid-budget films, as we know it.
Tons of the best movies of the past few decades, like The Truman Show, Good Will Hunting, or The Shawshank Redemption, came from small to medium budgets.
Mm-hmm.
For every $200 million reboot or sequel, we lose.
And like those 3 films that they showed, that the guy showed, how they made the movie wasn't throwing money at it. It was how you angled the camera. It was how you said the line. It was how you brought up the scene. The technique. This is an age where technique of filming mattered more than the equipment you used.
Came from small to medium budgets. For every $200 million reboot or sequel, we lose 10 potential masterpieces. And despite seemingly having more limitations, mid-sized films have so much more freedom to actually explore something new and bold. One director and a small team of writers working with actors who are trying to prove themselves can make a much more cohesive product than 100 writers and 10,000 CGI artists. People new to the business used to be able to move their careers forward with these films. They gave new actors, writers, and directors a chance to make a name for themselves. Today, these ideas are pushed into Netflix shows instead, which pad out their stories into multiple seasons and lose all the impact a simple 90-minute film would have had. Today, we're seeing the results of the shift. People have gotten tired of the green screen spectacle. It simply isn't enough to guarantee profits. And you can tell the studios have been getting nervous about this for a while. It's why they've been relying more and more.
Reboots, remakes, and reimaginings. A guide to confusing Hollywood terminology. That's it. It will get confusing, because at some point, if you flood the market with these many like alterations to an old product, you lose what made it so magical. You can only remake certain games, and you can only remake certain movies in so many ways before they lose the point. Just in case where, like again, Indiana Jones, they attempted the reboot. The Indiana Jones movie that happened recently was the second attempt. The Crystal Skull movie was the first attempt at revitalizing the franchise, and it flopped. And then they tried again with an older Harrison Ford, and it flopped. They are beating a horse that already finished its race, and when the more times you do that, it defeats the purpose of the original product.
More on reboots and sequels. As long as the franchise was successful once, they'll be happy to dig up its corpse and tell the same story again. And this
Until
trend
it's
of
done
studios
better.
relying more and more on sequels and reboots has become ever more prominent over the last couple of decades, driven largely by the commercial appeal of capitalizing on established franchises, which comes with a ready-made audience and hence a lower financial risk. However, this approach has led to what we see today, the most boring, mundane, mind-numbing movies made to make a profit.
Yeah, like the Ariel movie was a bit weird because again, it will always be a challenge to recreate animation in live action, like in the same vein that Full Metal Alchemist live action was trash. Death Note live action was trash. Dragon Ball Z Evolution was trash. Like these three live action properties did the original content no justice. But One Piece finally broke the barrier, and it's a good step forward. And Ariel movie, weird.
But before we continue, I want to talk about a video spotting site, Aura. Now, brokers have downloaded several appearances and more safe
Come
online
on, I want to talk about the movie more.
The Liberty Devil description below. You see, back a few decades ago, the success of original films often lied in the novelty, the fresh narrative, and unique storytelling techniques they bring to the table.
Again, like, yes, the important thing is the techniques and how you frame your piece. It's not about the amount of money you spend, but how you use the tools to create your product.
Original films have the liberty to explore uncharted territories with narrative themes, character dynamics, and visual storytelling, which often resonates with audiences seeking new experiences and messages, creating intrigue, engagement, allowing a deeper connection to the narrative and the characters within it. On the other hand, the mass production of sequels and reboots just cheapens this connection, rehashing the same old themes time.
I don't know Turner and Coach, but definitely I would say that I can't remember much of the only difference between the Aladdin movie and like the animation is additional songs that may or may not have like helped in the expansion of the universe, but I don't know.
Time and time again, without ever advancing the narrative of characters.
Kong was fine because I don't think we had any like, because the only films we had about King Kong movies was in the old tokusatsu age of Japan, and when Western media like put their hands on it, it got a little weird. But the Spider-Man movies are like a up and down thing where it did really well with Sam Raimi, and then Andrew Garfield's the writing was not great, and then Tom Holland went up again. And when Andrew Garfield came back again for No Way Home, it showed the potential of what that Peter Parker could have been. But again, Spider-Man 2 did not do the Amazing Spider-Man justice.
Rocks, which can lead to a very stale viewing experience. And this is coming from these big studios' desire to play it safe and cater to established fan bases while pandering to political narratives.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937.
Ah, geez, that's the problem. Oh, God. I mean, I understand where she's coming from. Is it because I'm stopping the video all the time that it's like this shit's happening? But like the idea that
And we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be
yeah,
saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
And we can see this
Be Snow White that mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be
yeah,
saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's
there's a big issue with that too on its own, which could be another video entirely. But the problem is with this, I understand. Yes, Snow White. They're trying to update the movie of Snow White to that of a 2023 new lens, because it's not 1953 anymore. Yes, but the way they push the idea, the way they're marketing right now is that they're writing a story where Snow White is she didn't need to be saved by a man. She is like so cool. She is like they're trying to make Snow White a figure to follow when the reality is you can still make it a situation where like yes, she might end up getting saved by well again like the kissing of the prince on a girl that's not even awake and available for consent, that's a bit of an issue. But it sounds like but the way you say it,
She's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
And we can
the movie was nothing like that. It was a movie about a girl that came across 7 dwarves, and the queen was so very upset that she is the most beautiful and fairest of them all. And so it was a revenge story of a queen who is jealous of a girl, so she tried to kill the girl, and somehow the prince and the dwarves decide, oh, you killed her, let's take justice. And it's a big what's going on situation. So I can understand where they want to change the story where it's not 1953, but also to make it and market it in a way that like says, hey, this girl is not going to be dreaming, not only just be dreaming about true love, this girl is not going to wait for a guy to save her. You can still write a situation to where that doesn't matter. You can still write a good story where she's good on her own, she's great, and the guy's great, and then they develop that relationship with the prince. But you can still write a situation where, despite everything that both characters do, she still gets poisoned, and he still needs the help of the dwarves to combat the witch. And then they find out that she has to kiss her, and if they develop the love between the two characters, fine. If they incorporate the dwarves and the prince that kisses her better, then that's great. But again, like the people have attacked this as a way of like women wokeness, and the issue isn't wokeness. The issue is not making it like 1953 again.
You can see this with the most recent sequels. Indiana Jones, for example. The original trilogy was lauded for the thrilling adventures and the charismatic performance of Harrison Ford, creating a balance between action, humor, and storytelling, making you want to explore the world, see new things, touching the hearts and minds of generations around the world. And then you compare these groundbreaking films to the most recent Indiana Jones films, and you can see this huge difference. All the new Indiana Jones films lacks any actual storytelling. Harrison Ford's old and tired, he doesn't care about the movies anymore. It feels forced and out of place, and the over-reliance on CGI, as opposed to practical effects, makes this whole thing feel like...
Yeah, that was the best thing about like the old Indiana films. It's the use of practical effects on a archaeology situation, and the fact that they included aliens in Crystal Skull was weird. In the Dial of Destiny, there is a saturation of CGI in both recent films that don't... The heart of the original Indiana Jones were the practical effects of the quippy swordplay scene that ended up being a gun show in the end. But like just the abruptness was like really jarring, and like, okay, what else is happening? So for them to like, they doubled down on CGI in recent years to where twice they tried to revitalize Indiana Jones and twice they flopped.
Child's play. Another example is The Thing. The original Thing was groundbreaking in its use of practical effects to create a sense of horror and intrigue. The tight, suspenseful narrative, coupled with a claustrophobic setting and the psychological tension among the characters, made it a horror classic. Its innovative portrayal of an alien entity and the underlying theme of paranoia stuck with audiences for years, whereas the most recent The Thing was just a complete failure. there was hardly any dread or suspense, again over-relying on CGI over
Oh,
practical
geez,
effects,
that's a
with an
lot of
incredibly bland
CGI.
story, rendering this film just a hollow cash cow. And of course, not to
Yeah,
mention
I can
Star
see that.
Wars. The original Star Wars films were groundbreaking, amazing character development, extremely interesting adventures, huge innovation, groundbreaking special effects, setting a huge precedent in Hollywood, changing the entire movie industry. And yet the most recent Disney woke flops
Yeah,
over-rely on
it's
boring CGI, boring scripts,
I would argue not being as woke narratives, but rather it was very subvertive to where, like, hey, this is bodega the Anthony Bodega. We were Mark. It was a nice like bait and switch where, hey, like the entire time we thought he was gonna be the Jedi, he's gonna be the Jedi, but no, it was actually Rey. I would argue that movie that Return of the Jedi, like this movie, this right here, this one right here, it showed it further it further showed that the lightsaber isn't as magical as you think. It's about a trooper can use it, but what would bring out the full potential of the lightsaber is someone like Rey. But then changing directors in movie 10, and then 10 in movie 11, and then course correcting in the third movie, it lost the plot because of a middle movie of a trilogy didn't have the same director, so the storytelling dropped, which that's the fault.
character arcs and hollow virtue signaling pandering, just like Ghostbusters, where the original film was
Yeah, Ghostbusters was
watched for decades, and yet the reboots are just
yeah the all female reboot didn't do too well because it was off-putting, but then the Afterlife was a successor to the original series, which is great.
this garbage, completely flopping at the box office.
Yeah, because this iteration, these set of Ghostbusters could have been better if it respected the original IP. It took until Ghostbusters Afterlife or something like that to make a proper sequel where it continued the story of what happened last time. Where in this movie, all the original Ghostbusters were just cameos. They were left as cameos, but not as a integral history to what these girls were following.
Just trying to rely on the nostalgia of the past whilst ruining the reputation of the original Ghostbusters movie. But it's not just reboots that's destroying modern movie making. One huge aspect is the shift in audience attention spans, which has been decimated by social media platforms and technology.
Like I said
Hardly any
earlier.
audiences today could ever sit through a movie from the 60s.
Some things change, and some things don't. Like the great cover.
That's weird, but yeah, but again, like it's a matter of like knowing when to use the source material correctly.
One thing you need to do before buying anything on.
God, these ads. Is it because I'm pausing every time?
Possible to get through. Hardly any audiences today could ever sit through a movie from the 60s. It'd be almost impossible to get through for most people, where dialogue was the driving
Like
force of
TikTok,
storytelling. But these
TikTok
slow
definitely like gains the infrastructure of TikTok includes 1 minute clips, maybe 30-second clips, or 15-second clips, and most YouTube videos have been debunked. Most creators have been making a situation where they keep your attention span for about a minute or minute 30 and then switches. The constant switching is keeping the attention very high. So it's a tactic.
movies with intriguing dialogue was what made the message of the film so powerful. But now today, movie studios are just bidding to cater to the lowest common denominator, the TikTok Subway Surfers crowd, making movies as fast-paced as possible, often at the expense of storytelling depth, character motivations, overall messaging, and nuanced unfolding of the plot. It's this fast-paced, fast-food-style movies that's making the message of these movies so watered down. Martin Scorsese, one of the greatest directors in history, claimed that these modern movies are like theme park rides when he referred to Marvel films.
But it's okay. It's okay. That
Encapsulating this broader industry sentiment, as Scorsese's comments hit at a concerning point that the essence of cinema is being overshadowed by a pursuit of adrenaline-fueled spectacles, nothing else. Explosions over meaning. meaning, doing everything they can to maximize the dopamine in their audience over
That's right.
life-changing messages. And it's this shift in narrative focus and storytelling pace that's emblematic of a larger...
The creative potential in the end of superhero. What now? The creative potential in the end of superhero craze. Yeah, because like during the superhero like incline in movies, there was a higher demand for spectacle, for explosions, for fights, and it further overshadowed movies like Good Will Hunting or The Departed, where the wordsmithing mattered, where writing the script and making it convincing mattered. Now it's more of like presenting a point. It's like it's in the same vein of why people attacked Barbie in a certain way, because it was putting the perspective of men down and women up, when the reality is like it's putting a limelight on a situation that people don't want to talk about often. But
trend about the commercialization of the cinematic space, and it's this tilt towards high-octane action and fast pacing for a mind-numb consumer jellyfish audience marks this dystopian trend of pandering to the dumbest among us, ultimately driven by the greed of a monopolized Hollywood industry.
That's not
Is
wrong.
it really just this move to action-packed, watered-down remakes that makes modern movies so bad? If only. The ideological infringement of modern movies is one of the key drivers ruining modern movies today, and we see this everywhere with the hollow cliche of the strong female character. The term strong female character has become ubiquitous in the entertainment industry.
There's nothing wrong with the strong female character. The problem is how you utilize that tool, like that character alone, because like what Katniss Everdeen, for example, was a great way of use where she was the main character, yes, and it showed her going through certain struggles that most people weren't able to at the time. Like the way they portrayed her was great. But then we look over here at the Scarlet Witch at what was her name? Wanda Stravonoff. The character of Wanda was ruined in terms of where you watch her progression, you watch the rise and fall of her emotions, and she comes to acceptance of loss. Like the whole point of the WandaVision property was her processing the loss of Vision after the events of Endgame, after the events of Infinity War. But the problem is, her character then gets butchered the moment we get into the multiverse of madness, to where we were subverted and she was actually the villain the entire time. But it threw away all of her character progression in WandaVision and made her as an enemy that like was not understand. She was made into a character that wasn't able to understand reason. Like there was a certain reason why she shouldn't have like done all the things that she did, but the movie butchered her character, asking what was the point of WandaVision if this was the direction the multiverse of madness was going to be. And her alternate version self is what helped her save herself. That doesn't change the fact that the one that we were living with in the proper timeline dies, where there's no indication that we're gonna get a different Scarlet Witch, but our Scarlet Witch within like the whole universe is dead as of this moment. So like it's an improper use of a character.
Used by writers, actors, directors, and marketing departments alike. However, its overuse has rendered it meaningless and so corporate, transforming it into a mere buzzword devoid of substance. In fact, Emily Blunt, a renowned female actress, actually expressed a disdain for this term, highlighting how it often results in stoic, unrelatable characters that are just so boring to watch.
Yeah, I would definitely like even that one clip about Gal Gadot and that other character for Snow White. It sounded boring to watch because they're just trying to like prove a point that like it's not 1953 anymore, man. Like these girls, this Snow White character, she can save herself. It's not about love at first sight. It's not about romance. She can save herself. But that's not the point. The point of the movie, the point of that situation was she wasn't how would she have been capable of protecting herself from the queen? So, and then correcting the prince is something that I would agree with, but everything else was fine. But again, like it's kind of a weird situation to where the strong female lead is probably the worst thing ever in terms of sometimes ruining the plot and ruining the message, and would cause people to get bored of it because they can turn off their brain.
And you just need to look at the Marvels to see what she means. The strong female character in all modern movies is presented as supremely competent, rarely facing any actual challenges or setbacks, and almost never allowed to fail. It's just an excuse for movie studios to virtue signal for ESG points, to get more investment money from the big names like BlackRock, and make their brand look squeaky clean, completely ignoring the fact
You're losing my fact, but I should probably while this ad runs at least, is like the idea that in the case of the Marvels, it makes sense to where it's discussing their power set and their involvement in the universe. But for them to just for people to gloss over that fact is a problem.
and why would they? And make their brand look squeaky clean, completely ignoring the fact that nobody wants to watch it. And why would they? Strong female characters are often depicted as having everything they need to succeed from the outset, requiring the world to change around them rather than.
Although I'll admit, doesn't that make I would argue as a hot take that that doesn't change the fact that the argument of, hey, these woke female led films are causing a problem where men led films have the same situation to where they're affecting the world and changing it to bend to their objective in the same way. So there is an argument for equality between male and female characters, but a lot of people are so saturated with male content that the moment they have a female lead do things that a guy would, like if you did the movie like Black Widow and you change that character, the moment you change Scarlett Johansson's character to a man and put him through that same scenario, people won't argue because it's almost the same thing. It's the lensing is the problem for a lot of people.
Than undergoing personal development, which not only sends an unrealistic message to audiences, but also results in poor writing. Characters like Captain Marvel, who achieve their full potential by simply casting off external limitations, exemplifies this trend, leaving audiences with very little to empathize with, as the character's victory is always assured from the beginning. But that's not the only thing that's unrealistic. Female characters are always physically equal to their male counterparts in movies, which results in these unbelievable and kind of cringe-worthy fight scenes, where nobody even believes what they're watching. And this focus on physical strength as a measure of a character's worth is not only unrealistic, but also misses the point of what truly makes a character strong. True strength lies in its character's resilience, bravery, and determination, not their physical prowess. Just look at films like The Truman Show, or characters like Ewan from Lord of the Rings, who stands up to formidable enemies despite being physically outmatched. And by ignoring this, these main roles are completely stripped of their emotional complexity and vulnerability, completely devoid of any actual femininity, making these movies completely inauthentic and just unwatchable. Audiences can sense that something is amiss, and that's why everybody hates these modern movies. And in reverse, male characters that were once depicted as stoic, reserved, and emotionally controlled have now transformed into emotional crybabies, lacking any self-assurance. And this not only deviates from realistic.
I would argue that in the case of Kylo Ren, his progression to how he became made sense because hey Ken, Kylo Ken made sense because he was almost killed by his uncle because of his potential for darkness, and then Snoke came in and nurtured that and took advantage of him. He was a boy that was taken advantage of, and because of the process of grooming Kylo Ren to who he is, he never had. I don't feel like he had the chance to properly process what just happened, because until you process that trauma, you're always going to be that 13-year-old that almost got killed by your uncle. You're not going to be the kid that your uncle was in a situation where he saw potential, he got scared, and the moment that he reconsidered and stepped back from his irrational rationale, you ran away without properly breaking down what just happened.
male behavior, it also completely diminishes the appeal of male characters, making them less relatable and aspirational, all in the name of their woke ideology, deconstructing once revered male heroes into shadows of their former selves, all for the benefit of a select few investment firms, with iconic characters like Luke Skywalker and Rocky being stripped of their heroic qualities, leaving all.
I would argue that Rocky. The problem is with Rocky is that his character doesn't. I would probably argue that the way he lived his life, and for him, it's very hard for people to change their character. But I can argue that he can accept some changes, but to change his character completely to match the setting of the times is an assassination to him in general. Sure, like there are some things that he does that will not go well now, but for him to stay the same but accept bits and pieces is a good character development. But for them to do that in Creed, different.
Audiences with a tainted legacy, reflecting the trend of Hollywood to deliberately attempt.
Does cinema push positive male role models out of the picture? I don't think so, but it's a conversation and hard discussion because it's a situation where we're in the 2020s and we have to set out more roles and more films that depict both the male and female character has a seat at the table. And oftentimes the problem with these current characters is by finally allowing male characters to actually show feelings like the movie can, it also shows there needs to be a precedent to where you need to show female characters that they aren't damsels anymore. Yes, it's agreeable that they shouldn't show females as damsels anymore, but you have to also allow a balance between women that can save themselves and can do things on their own, and you can also allow equal amounts of men who can have their emotions, who can be sensitive but still do things. You need to show women who can still cry and kick your ass, and guys who can cry and do what needs to be done. There has to be a balance, and not a lot of people are getting it nowadays. It's very hard, and it's been saturated with so much content of toxic male role models that it's tough to make a decent male role model.
To undermine positive male role models, eroding the admiration and inspiration they once provided, and instead serving them a cold-hearted, plastic, fake, warped vision of the world. That's why everywhere today, you see this constant trope of comically brain-dead characters, of easily outwitted and provoked men, with the underlying message being clear: men are dumb, and their accomplishments are unearned, necessitating the intervention of smarter, stronger, female characters to set things straight. And this all contributes to a broader pattern.
Every semi-competent male hero has a more talented female sidekick. Why isn't she the hero instead? Because it doesn't make a compelling story, because oftentimes with those kind of settings, it's the protagonist is often the character that makes the most change. We want to watch a character who has made the most change throughout a film. But with the talented female sidekick, oftentimes female leading side characters are at a place to where they are already kick-ass. It's a film. Oftentimes films are handicapping the guy who is incompetent and making them a little more competent. It's always about making the dumb guy be less dumb. It's always about making the semi-competent guy a little more competent. That's the point of the hero's journey. People watch movies for the character change in the character, but when you leave the side character, the side character female character as at a 10, and you don't show it's a whole thing, you know. It's kind of like how throughout throughout the Captain Marvel, she started the movie as an 8, then became a 10. But other movies where it was a male leading role, they put him. Thor is an example of he's at a 10, and then they knock him down to 4, and you watch him make choices to make him back to a 10. That's the hero's journey, and it's it's an improper use of the hero's journey that they often like mess up.
Of ideological infringement in modern blockbusters, where the agenda takes precedence over storytelling and character development, and the result is a generation of movies that lack genuine diversity in character portrayal, opting instead for shallow, one-dimensional representations of gender, not only undermining the complexity of real human behavior, but also diminishing the overall quality of cinema as a whole. But it's not just the characters, it's also the actors playing these people. Celebrities that were once seen as glamorous, refined, and untouchable now just seem like completely out of touch, outdated, and deeply insecure people. No one really admires the celebrities playing these characters anymore, as social media has provided celebrities with a direct line of communication to their fans, and the results are ugly. And one of the main glimpses of this was with the Imagine song during COVID. Imagine there's no heaven. With videos like this exposing the complete detachment of these celebrities to the regular people, revealing their lack of knowledge and understanding on so many issues, being more just puppets for the studio's political messages. And this decline of the celebrity mystique and the exposure of their ignorance goes way beyond just social media, as in Hollywood, the ideological infringement and push for political correctness has led to a stark decline in storytelling quality and character development. Even South Park is now calling them out for it, because the focus on agenda-driven narratives and one-dimensional character portrayals is just leaving audiences deeply unhappy with what they watch. It's only kid films that really take off anymore. Anything else made by Disney or Marvel just seems to constantly bomb at the box office because nobody cares to see these films anymore. However, all of these issues have been catalyzed by the prevalence of poor writing in Hollywood. You see that.
Yeah, because like it's all. What makes a bad video doesn't change between YouTube and Hollywood. The writing matters, and the content and conversation in a movie matters. If you make a brain dead movie, you'll get brain dead viewers, you know?
The narrative stakes in cinema's past were palpable. Death was irreversible, villains were menacing, and the hero's journey was a narrative compass. But today, Hollywood's
hero's journey. I mentioned that.
And one of the worst examples of
this is the worst example. What are you talking about? This is the worst example that I want to hear. I don't need these. I'm getting commercials because I keep pausing because there's a lot of things to talk about, to say regarding these subjects. Like, I have something to say. Stop stopping me from saying things because there's a thing that actually matters, where it's not about the damn cashmere clothing, but the fact that oftentimes it's a misuse of the hero's journey, because in the hero's journey it's really important to just like allow the characters to grow. But whenever like movies knock down male characters to an egregiously low point and keep female characters at a 10 and forcing male characters to reach back to being a 10 again, that's where the toxicity of like, oh, this is a woke female film, this is woke, that's where it draws the line, and that's where the point actually doesn't matter. That's where it hurts, because again, it doesn't change whether or not you're using a male character or female character. If you have a female character leading, that makes a little more sense, to where she has to be, she needs to be put in a place where she has to grow. But the problem with Captain Marvel is that she always had the confidence the entire time, and sure, she was knocked down a few pegs, like memory loss, like loss in like certain family members and characters, but in her case, she was at a 10. She dropped to a 9 and went back to being a 10, and the entire time you don't see her making as much of an impact and as much of a change as you would Thor, where the first two movies, every movie that he's a part of, he was knocked down. Or no, Captain America is a good example. Captain America is a good example to where he is at a place to where he knows the world in a certain frame, and then at the introduction of the Winter Soldier and at the introduction of Nick Fury like being killed, his view on common practices has dropped substantially. But like he's being challenged, and he is learning to adapt based on those challenges, and he's working through it. But again, like, that doesn't change the fact that Captain Marvel never went through that journey that other people have. Like, she's at a 10 the entire movie, and we want to see her vulnerable. We want to see her having a problem.
writing that undermines these elements. And one of the worst examples of this is the writing in the MCU, which has made death completely lose its finality. For example, in Avengers Endgame, time travel is used to reverse fatal events from the Avengers Infinity War movie, effectively nullifying the impact of character deaths that struck the emotional chord of its audience, completely watering down the story. And similarly, concepts like the multiverse, as seen in Spider-Man No Way Home, introduces alternate realities where deceased characters live, which completely diminishes the significance of their death in the first place.
I mean, they still... I would argue you, because the fact that, like, it doesn't, like, the whole point of, like, that movie on its own, it showed, like, them trying to fight their fate, and eventually it shows that even fighting their fate's a little futile, but the lessons they learned from that fight matters, to where what was important was that Tom Holland chose to not give into the rage of Aunt May dying. The importance of, like, sure, like, an alternate reality of, like, it's only alternative until it's only an alternative timeline if they stayed, but once the characters disappear and go back to their own universes, we don't know if Kirk Connors is still alive. We don't know if Dr. Octavius still... Does Dr. Octavius still live post the events? We don't know. We only know that they're being put back where they were when they were pulled, because he still died a hero, and he's going to go back to his world, back to that moment. Because all these heroes that died or got to prison, they were plucked from the moment that they died, but when they returned, it was explained that they were going to go back to that moment in time. They never say in this movie that they are, like, displaced from that ending
to worry about, as they can just be in another universe elsewhere. But it's not just death. Recent portrayals of villains, such as Steppenwolf in the initial release of Justice League, illustrates a huge lack of depth and genuine threat. In contrast, villains like Darth Vader from Star Wars and Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs were once sources of profound fear and presented significant challenges to the protagonists. But modern villains today in Hollywood often lack the complexity and menace that make them compelling adversaries. And this is all part of the destruction of the hero's journey, which was first conceptualized by Joseph Campbell, and is the narrative archetype that has outlined the best story's protagonist adventures and personal transformations. It's a structure that's resonated through centuries of storytelling, from ancient myths to modern cinema. However, it's only up until now that recent films have neglected this time-tested blueprint, leading to these stories that always feel disjointed and so unsatisfying as a viewer. Take, for example, the Star Wars sequel trilogy. The Force Awakens introduced Rey, a character with mysterious origins and untapped potential, seemingly setting up a classic hero journey. However, as the trilogy progressed, particularly in The Last Jedi, there was a notable departure from this path. Rey's rapid acquisition of skills without traditional trials and mentorship typically seen in the hero's journey left little room for character development or even audience connection. And it's this lack of a clear, coherent path of growth for Rey that resulted in a huge missed opportunity to showcase a transformative and inspiring hero's journey. But it isn't just Star Wars in the MCU. Another example of this is the Fantastic Beasts series, a prequel to the...
I would probably argue that, like, sure, she had an entire progression of, like, gaining 10 level... despite her skills growing up, it doesn't change the fact that we still saw her catching up emotionally. For her to watch her catch up into a maturity in terms of choice, social maturity, and moral maturity, made still a compelling story in contrast to like yes, she has all these powers now. Her skills have matured to mastery, yes. But because like it wasn't scaled to her emotions and wasn't scaled to her perceptions of the world, she still faced challenges despite being a 10th level mage. She still had to learn to make proper choices with great power. You know? Like Spider-Man, you know?
Beloved Harry Potter saga. New Sakamander's character, while endearing, never follows a clear hero's journey either. Unlike Harry Potter, the film is more focused on world building and setting up future plot lines than on Newt's personal growth and the challenges he must overcome. And so it just feels aimless.
I mean, he does overcome things. Come on, don't knock it down.
Simply a cash grab. And you can really see
it's not a cash grab, okay? Newt Scamander did grow, but he didn't grow in the way that people wanted him to, which is the issue.
The great stories like Lord of the Rings, where Frodo Baggins' journey is a textbook example of campbell structure, as we follow Frodo's reluctant step into adventure, the trials he faces, the allies he gains, and his ultimate transformation are all classic elements that engage the audience deeply because you can connect with his character. His journey is fraught with peril, and each victory is hard won, making his character's growth and the story's resolution profoundly satisfying. The disregard for the hero's journey in Hollywood can lead to characters who seem to lead from point A to point B without the audience witnessing the crucial internal and external battles that define a hero. And so these stories always lack any depth and fail to resonate with an audience on a personal level. And where storytelling and character development are already compromised by poor writing and ideological agendas, the issue of actor selection further complicates the cinematic landscape, as nepotism is rife in Hollywood. The children of established stars like Jaden Smith and Lily Rose Depp often find red carpets rolled out before them, not solely by virtue of their talents, but also their lineage. And this isn't to describe
that was a problem for them too.
To highlight a skewed playing field in the Hollywood arena, and it has many consequences. Firstly, it always leads to the same sort of casting in these movies, where the same archetypes are perpetuated by similar kinds of actors, which always limits the richness of on-screen representation, because when roles are inherited rather than earned, the resulting performances lack the depth that comes from a diverse array of
because Jaden definitely didn't get a chance to really learn his
and with the increasing
placement.
budgets of these huge blockbuster movies and a continual decline in medium budget films and small budget films, Hollywood's creating an environment where the stakes are so high that the producers have to gravitate towards safe choices, which means always using the same established names or those with industry connections, completely stifling the emergence of new talent and ultimately leading to a stagnation of creativity. And then the actors who do secure these roles in these high budget movies consistently over time become complacent. Their performances lack the raw edge and fever and dedication that often characterizes those who are still seeking to prove themselves. And the narrowing of the talent pool has a ripple effect on the industry as a whole, leading to certain predictability in performances and a lack of authenticity that audiences perhaps even unconsciously can detect. That's why more and more people just don't care about movies that much anymore. And if they do, they usually don't take away any greater message from the film, completely stifling the future of Hollywood. Something has to change here. How many more flops do the studios need to understand that radical change is needed in Hollywood? Only time will tell.
It's a pretty good move, pretty good. But the problem is, like, it still stands where it's a good movie. I'm gonna go ahead and like drop the link down below for Moon. But that was a good video. Like, there are certain points that I kept wanting to argue because it's a problem with the situation. It's like it's within its moment where it doesn't work. It's a problem sometimes, because like there's some characters that are in its own journey, and like we are trying to flesh out that journey, but it's not in the way that people want, and that's the issue. There's a lot of like, should they, shouldn't they, and like it's a big problem. But that was a good movie. Why every movie is flopping. Very good. I will drop the link down below. But what are your thoughts on the product? Because I feel like you heard me say for almost 40 minutes of the actual content my opinions about the movie, but ultimately what needs to fix movies from flopping is just proper writing. If you write it better, you need to write the plot, write the script, and then rewrite it to make sense. But yeah, let's discuss down in the comments below. Tell me what you think, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye bye.